Radio 418.
What's up, beautiful people? This is John Montagna, and you're listening to a very special edition of Radio 418. As I'm sure you're aware by now, Pat DiNizio, lead singer for the Smithereens, songwriter, just the voice of my youth, passed away on Tuesday. I got the news late Tuesday night. If you know me at all, you know what a big deal this is. The Smithereens were my heroes growing up, musically and otherwise. When I saw them at the Beacon Theater on October 29th, 1988, it changed my life. I'd seen concerts before that made me want to be in the music business, but it was always kind of a far-off dream. Seeing the Smithereens on stage, seeing those four guys, Pat, Jimmy, Dennis, and Mike, those guys looked like me. And I felt like I could go and do that. That could be me up there. I identified with them in a way that I didn't identify with other bands at that time. It's a long story, the impact that they had on me. I met them a bunch of times. They were always sweet and wonderful and down to earth. No barriers between rock star and fan with those guys. Jimmy Babjack on lead guitar, Mike Massaros on bass, Dennis Dyken on drums. Later on, Severo Hornacion was the bassist. It was to this day. But Pat was the leader. He was the primary songwriter. And his passing was a gut punch that I was not expecting. He'd been in ill health for many years. We all knew that. So, it wasn't a total shock, but it's always a shock when someone leaves you like that. I couldn't really think of any proper response. Not that you need a response, but this is the world we live in, right? But then my friend Scott Erickson, fellow musician, fellow Beatles freak in Pennsylvania, turns out to have known Pat pretty well, worked with him for a while in his side project, the Scotch Plainsmen. And so I'm going to talk to Scott, and we're going to share some stories about Pat and what he means to us. I don't want to say meant, because he still means a lot to all of us. Besides being one of the greatest American rock and roll bands ever, what you saw was what you got with Pat DiNizio. He embodied everything that was good about music and about rock and roll. You know what? I'm going to quit blabbering. I'm going to get Scott on the phone and let's talk. Hang on one second.
Hey.
What's up, brother? How are you?
I'm all right. How are you, man?
Not too bad. So I guess let's start at the beginning. When did you first become aware of the Smithereens?
I became aware of the Smithereens. Wow. 1986, I remember watching MTV, and I remember seeing the videos from Behind the Wall of Sleep. And I remember looking at this lead singer, this beatnik-looking guy. Guy looks like a beatnik, but he's got a Beatle haircut, but he's going bald at the same time.
Right.
And I just thought, this guy just looks like a dork. I have no interest in this at all. and I turned it, and I changed the channel. Couple of years later, it's now 1989. So I was 17 years old.
Yeah.
And I hear this unbelievable guitar riff. This
Okay.
I'm hearing this killer guitar riff in a sea of, you know, a lot of synth pop.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Yep.
And I was already, you know, I was raised listening to oldies anyway.
Yeah.
So here I am hearing this delightfully retro heavy guitar.
Yeah.
And I was hooked.
Yep. So you were primed like I was, because I was same thing, you know, as a teenager in the 80s. My jams were the Beatles and the Monkees and the Who. And, you know, people forget. And I just got off the phone. I was on the Hustle podcast having the same conversation with John Lamoureux that in the 80s, if you were a teenager in the 80s into 60s music, you were kind of like on your own.
Well, see, I'm going back even worse than that, or even farther, because my dad was a disc jockey in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
And he was an oldies DJ.
I see.
So I grew up on what I call the holy trinity of rock and roll, which was Little Richard, Fats Domino, and Elvis Presley.
Got it. Okay.
Although other people have argued that Chuck Berry belongs there over Elvis, but my dad raised me on Elvis first, and then I kind of discovered Chuck after that.
Yeah.
But that's a whole thing. But
okay.
I had yet to really get into the Monkees. I got into the Monkees in late '86 in the 20th anniversary stuff.
Right. Me too.
But yeah, you and I are about the same age, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So but you were primed to hear this, you know, quote unquote retro sound, which, you know, years later sounds just as fresh to me as it did then. I mean, I was on the train last night coming home from my gig, listening to A Date with the Smithereens, and it's like I said to John on the Hustle podcast just now, I dare you to find anything else from 1994 that isn't date stamped 1994.
Agreed. Oh yeah, absolutely. And and all of the Smithereens stuff like that. Even going back to the Girls About Town EP.
Yeah.
You know, none of it sounds dated. I mean, Girls About Town EP came out in 1980, but it doesn't sound like 1979 or 1980.
Exactly.
You know, and Beauty and Sadness doesn't sound. It doesn't. And I'm not even talking about the obvious, you know, throwback to Tomorrow Never Knows.
Sure.
With the title cut.
Right.
But my favorite Smithereens tune off of that is Tracy's World.
Oh yeah.
But even that doesn't sound like 1983. It's just, you know, the stuff isn't dated at all. It holds up today as well as it did then.
Good melodies are timeless.
Good melodies, but I think what really got me, especially in recent years, the unsung hero of the Smithereens, was Mike Bizzarro.
Oh yeah. I could do a whole other show on what that guy was meant to me as a bass player.
Right. I mean, it's funny. I'm a guitarist primarily, but I do play bass.
Sure.
But Mike just the unsung hero. But that's again a whole. But basically, I got into the Smithereens I'd heard of them with Especially for You.
Yeah.
And Green Thoughts. I mean, Green Thoughts kind of passed me by because I wasn't really interested at that point. But then when I heard A Girl Like You, and then heard Blues Before and After, just the two back to back, it was a 1-2 punch.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, but once I heard A Girl Like You, I was hooked.
Interesting. All right. So then, when was the first time you saw him live?
The first time I saw the Smithereens live was 2005.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that's that is another part of a later chapter in my Pat stories.
Okay.
But I was aware of the Smithereens, and I was hooked on the music. I didn't go to a lot of concerts in the 80s or early 90s.
Okay.
Just for whatever reason. One, I just didn't have a ton of money to do it.
Sure.
But in the mid '90s, when I turned 21, I got involved in the local music scene because I was also slowly starting to be a gigging musician.
Okay.
In the local bars and clubs, and I used to hang out with a band in town that used to play a venue that I ended up moving I ended up moving from Easton, Pennsylvania to Allentown, Pennsylvania. I ended up moving about 3 blocks away from this venue, walking distance.
Okay.
So in 1997, while I was going to this bar, hanging out once a month with my friends' bands, and getting to become part of the local music scene,
yeah,
I saw a poster on the wall coming August, whatever, Pat DiNizio of the Smithereens. And I went, holy shit.
Yeah.
I said, I'm not missing this.
Right.
So by this time I'd already been playing a few years, and I brought my blow up cassette with me because since I knew everybody at this bar. Right. I said, I could easily walk backstage, knock on the door to the green room, or the dressing room, and just walk in, because I knew the owners of the place. I knew everybody. It was like,
totally.
It was like, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
So I end up meeting Pat. I literally walked over and I posted a picture of me and Pat. And I got a photo of him and I together back then. Okay. And I walked in and I'm talking to say, hey, I got a couple of questions. I said, one, would you mind signing this? Yeah. And he signed my blow-up cassette, no problem. And then 2, I said, hey, any chance you're going to do a Don't Come Easy, and maybe I could sit in with you? Wow. I was a ballsy kid.
I was going to say, you got some balls on you, man, to just go right up there like that.
Again,
but that's how people like you and I get places in life, though.
That's how. Well, in some years it worked to my detriment. In others, it became a blessing.
Well, so then you find the balance later on. That's all.
But yeah, but Pat was like, he goes, well, I'm not going to do that one tonight. He goes, if I was, I'd say, yeah, why not? Yeah. But he goes, but here, I'll be happy to sign this for you. And he signed it, and I have to dig it out somewhere. I've got it. Yeah. I still have it. Yeah. But and then I got a picture. Then at the end of the night, he's like, hey, you want to check out my guitar? He was playing this Gretsch Rancher acoustic. And he goes, yeah. He goes, well, I'm packing up my other stuff. Here, go ahead, play. Yeah. So it's like after the show. So this is just one of these things I remember. I picked up his guitar, started playing Pleasant Valley Sunday with the riff. Yeah. And Pat just looks at me and goes, you're a hell of a guitar player. Wow. And this is 97. I barely knew what I was doing. But so that was that. That was my meeting with Pat. That was my Smithereens encounter. I was like, cool. Yeah. Cut to mid 2005. Okay. I'm now gigging relatively steadily over the years, and I've got money to spend. Yeah. And I'm looking on eBay. For Smithereens stuff. Yeah. And I find a copy of the legendary Lost Girls About Town EP. Ooh. Okay. There's only 5,000 of them pressed. Oh wow. Okay. So because this was a completely self-released thing. Right. They did it themselves. Back when it was a big deal to do that. Yeah. We got a record. It was not it was not an easy thing to put out your own CD in the 80s. It wasn't your own album or whatever. It was an easy thing to put out your own release, period, in 1980. Sure. And these guys put out a 7-inch vinyl LP, and I saw this. I remember hearing about it from the Attack of the Smithereens rarity CD that came out of Capitol. Right. And I was like, because I had everything else. I said, actually, the only thing was I managed to find over the years, I'd found a 5-song version of the remix Beauty and Sadness EP. Right. I even managed to track down the old Smithereens live CD EP. Yeah. I got that when it came out. I'm pretty sure the live CD, I remember
seeing it in the stores before we had a CD player.
Right.
And being kind of sad that because it was a CD only release. That was when they made CD only releases. And it was like the moment we got a CD player in my house, I think that was like the first or second disc I ever got. You know,
I'm much like you. I bought my first CD before I had a CD player, and I still have that CD today.
Which is what?
Then and Now, the Best of the Monkees.
Yeah, man.
And I got the only reason I got that CD at all because I'd had the vinyl and I had the cassette.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I got the CD because the vinyl only had like 10 or 12 tracks.
Right.
The CD had a whopping 27 tracks.
Right.
So I was like, that, and the second CD I got was A Hard Day's Night.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
So anyway.
So 2005.
I collected all this Smithereens stuff.
Yeah.
And here I am. I'm on eBay, and I find a copy of the Girls About Town EP, and I start bidding on it.
Uh-huh.
And somebody else is bidding on it. And finally, this was in the days where you could contact other bidders on eBay.
Okay.
So I sent the guy an email saying, hey, look, it's getting out of my price range. But could I ask you at the very least, if you win this, could you, I'll send you postage money, whatever. Could you at least make me a cassette copy of this?
Uh-huh.
So I have the songs.
Yeah.
He emails me back. He goes, I already have 5 of them. I already have 5 of them. So I'll just retract my bid. And you can have it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Well, neither one of us won the auction.
Oh.
But this guy, he goes, dude, you're such a fan. He goes, I know the guys. I'm friends with Pat and all this. He goes, what's your address? I'll just give you a copy.
Oh, wow.
Blew me away.
Wow.
And he and I got to be friends. And he goes, every year, he goes, the band, he lived in Maryland. He goes, every year the band plays the Rams Head. He goes, if one year, if you could make it down, he goes, I'll get you tickets on me. Come on down.
Sweet. I've played that place. It's tiny.
Yeah, but it's such a good sounding room.
Oh, it's a great sounding room, and it's a great room if it's a band that you really love. You're like right up next to them.
Oh yeah. I remember one year I sat there. I was at Jimmy's feet.
Wow, nice.
Another year I was in Severo's feet.
Yeah.
So I get the EP from this guy, and we maintained a friendship, and we would talk, and I was like, hey, thank you so much. He said, hey, remember he said if anytime there's a local Smithereens gig to you,
mm-hmm.
he goes, let me know, and I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. He goes, there's a show in Scott. How far are you from Scotch Plains, New Jersey? Said my dad was born there.
Wow.
I live maybe 2 hours from there now.
Yeah.
He goes, well, come on out. And come on out to the show. And he goes, I'll introduce you to Pat and the guys. I was like, cool. He goes, oh yeah, by the way, we're having a surprise birthday party after the show for Pat's 50th. You want to come?
Wow.
I was like, let me think about that. Yeah, I would love to.
Wow. Now, can we just stop for a minute and say what that means? What kind of guy Pat is that a guy's throwing a surprise party for him and he's bringing in like fans that he's never met?
Yeah,
it says a lot about what kind of guy he was.
Well, the guy Pat was?
Yes.
Well, at this point, I really didn't know what kind of. I'd only met him that one time, in '97.
Sure.
So I really didn't know, but the fact that this guy was like, he goes, yeah, you know what, you seem like you're not going to be the type of psycho fan,
right?
He goes, yeah, come on along,
right?
And he goes, as a matter of fact, what Pat is doing, and he was explaining how Pat was doing the 7th inning stretch show.
Right.
Which I don't know. Have you ever seen that?
I've seen parts of it. I found the link on YouTube to the full show. I'm going to watch it soon.
I'm in it.
Oh, really? Okay.
You can see me from behind because The day in question, I drove down to Scotch Plains, met this guy Steve, who was friends with Pat. I met him at Pat's house.
Wow.
And then we had to go to Scotch Plains High School because Pat was doing an interview with Joan Jett for the special.
Okay.
So now, about a week or two prior to me being invited, I had sent Pat an email asking him if he had a copy of the Girls About Town EP from tape rather than having to source it from vinyl.
Right.
I said, he goes, look, your email, he goes, thank you so much for the email. It's a little too much to talk about, to discuss by mail. Here's my number. Give me a call.
Oh my God.
So I called Pat DiNizio.
Wow.
And we ended up talking about some stuff and it was cool. And then I didn't think anything of it anymore. And then I get the invite. Hey, come to the show. We're going to have a birthday party for Pat. So I knew Pat was big into pop culture, and I knew we were kind of, despite the fact that he was 15 years older than me or something like that.
Right.
I knew we kind of were kindred spirits, because one of the things he did was he started quoting this legendary Orson Welles outtake tape.
Oh, about he's doing the voiceover session, and I take directions from one person under protest.
Right, under protest.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah. Oh, sweet. Okay.
So Pat and I started talking about that. So I had this CD. I don't even know if I still have the files of MP3 somewhere. It was a bootleg set called Celebrities at Their Worst.
Yeah, sure. I've got both Volume 1 and 2 on CD.
I burned copies of those and brought them to Pat as a birthday gift.
Sweet. Okay.
And we kind of hit it off. I got to meet him, and here I am backstage at this show in Scotch Plains, New Jersey, and I see this guy, another guy, thick rimmed glasses, taking pictures. He goes over, "Hey, I'm Dennis."
Oh.
Dude, I know who you are.
Yeah. So now you're in the Smithereens inner circle now.
Yeah, and this is almost by accident.
Yeah.
But I'm following Pat's website, and Pat decided, he goes, "Hey, this summer, 2006, I'm going to do the first annual barbecue/fan jam in my backyard."
Right.
And I emailed Pat. I said, "You need somebody to bring a PA?" He goes, "Yeah, that'd be great." So I brought the PA and ended up, it was a 2-day thing, a Saturday and Sunday. On Saturday, I ended up playing some guitar.
Nice.
Because a friend of Pat's named John Hausman.
Yeah.
Was going to come in and play bass. And I said to Pat, I said, "So let me guess, I know how this guy John Hausman got to play bass with you." Pat's like, "How?" I said, "He earned it." and Pat just kind of, again, a knowing smile.
Right.
It was that pop culture.
Got it.
And Pat laughed. So I ended up playing some guitar.
Okay.
Then the next day, John couldn't be there, but Jim Babjack was coming in.
Oh, wow.
So that day, and I posted a video of it on my page after the news about Pat broke.
Yeah.
There's a video of me playing bass. Pat is singing, Jimmy's on lead guitar, and this guy named Steve O'Neill is playing drums.
Okay.
And I'm playing bass and doing backup vocals, and we did Behind the Wall of Sleep.
Okay.
Prior to that, I'm sorry, I'm skipping.
Okay.
In January of 2006, they did their annual Maryland, Virginia, New York weekend.
Right.
They played at the Ram's Head on a Friday. They played the State Theater in Falls Church on a Saturday. And then they played B.B. King's in New York on a Sunday.
Right.
And 2005, I was like, you know what? My birthday's coming up in beginning of February. This is going to be my birthday present to myself. I'm going to get a motel. I'm going to drive down. I'm going to do both shows, and then I'm going to drive into New York to Brooklyn to visit with my friends, and we're going to go see them on the. So I did all 3 shows.
Great.
And I show up in Falls Church around the time they're loading in, and Pat's like, Scott, what are you doing here? So I saw you last night. He goes, yeah. He goes, I didn't expect to see you all three. I said, well, I'm here. I bought my tickets. He goes, well, come on in. This is like while they're loading in. Come on in, grab a guitar. Come on in, make yourself at home. You're part of the family.
Wow.
So I had kind of, again, my ballsiness bolstered by the fact that Pat was like, come on in. I said, listen, I need to ask you guys a huge favor because nobody's ever going to believe me if this happens. I said, obviously I don't want to take up any time that you guys, for sound check or whatever that you need to do. But is there any way when you guys are done with your sound check, if I have my bass in my trunk in the car, could I bring my bass in and maybe play a tune with you guys at the end of your sound check? And Severo, if he wouldn't mind, would take some pictures for me. And Pat looked at Jimmy and Dennis and said, yeah, okay.
Nice.
So they finished their sound check, and I was just kind of hanging out, being cool, laid back, very quiet. He's like, hey, Pat's like said to Daddy, said, let's do this thing with the kid. Go get your bass.
Nice.
Okay. So I went out and got my bass. I gave Severo my camera.
Mm-hmm.
Pat said, so what do you want to do? I said, why don't we do you version of one? Want to do one after 909? He's like, he goes, well, we do a different version. I said, I got it.
Yeah.
And Jimmy kicked it off.
Nice.
And we started playing, and I came in on the bass. And Jimmy and Pat were doing their vocals, and I started doing the third harmony.
Yeah.
And Pat looked at me and went, yeah, you're all right.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
And then that's how the whole thing with the backyard barbecue came in.
Okay.
And then I ended up bringing the PA out a couple of years in a row and being like running the PA system. And the second year, Pat let me do like a solo set before becoming part of the Pat DiNizio fan jam.
Got it.
Part.
So let's jump ahead a little bit. How did this lead to officially being in the Scotch Plainsmen? And first, explain what that is.
I was just about to get to that. All right.
Okay.
About a year later, Pat says, he goes, hey, we're going to do something special this year. He goes, we're going to do the entire Beatles White Album.
Wow.
What? We're going to do the entire Beatles White Album. He goes, I need you on guitar.
Wow.
I said, are you bringing Jimmy in to be lead? He goes, no. He goes, this is going to be something different. He goes, you're the lead guitar player. He goes, you're almost kind of like the musical director. I need you to help me put the band together.
Wow.
So that's how we got Bruce Pike, because I had met Bruce through the fan barbecues and things. Mm-hmm. And Bruce brought in a drummer named Bill Trueluck. And I came in on guitar, and Pat brought Sam Fairley and Tom Frangione in. And I brought a keyboard player in, a guy named David. Yeah. And Scotch Plainsmen was going to be Pat's little side project, the Beatles tribute band. And the name was just kind of a joke.
On the Quarrymen, yeah, sure.
Well, no, it wasn't. It was we were kind of looking for a name.
Right.
And Tom Frangione said, well, you know what? Pat's from Scotch Plains. Why don't we just call ourselves the Scotch Plainsmen?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it stuck.
Got it.
And so the gig Pat put together was this big. It was going to be a fundraiser thing at the Scotch Plains Italian American Hall.
Okay.
And it was going to be an all-day thing. The Gripweeds were going to do a set. The Scotch Plainsmen was going to do the entire White Album.
Right.
And then the Smithereens were going to play a set. And it was the Smithereens at this point for this gig were Pat, Jimmy, Severo, and Kurt Rail.
Okay.
From the Gripweeds. Dennis wasn't there.
Right.
But we ended up doing the whole White Album, and then the following year we did Rubber Soul.
Wow.
We did Rubber Soul. We did a combination of the American and UK versions, and we did the Day Tripper We Can Work It Out single.
Okay.
So we covered all of '65.
Beautiful.
Or all of late '65 with it. And that was it. So I was one of the founding members of the Scotch Plainsmen.
Nice. And how far did that go? How far did the Scotch Plainsmen go? Like, what was like? How big did that get?
It didn't get big. It was like a little local thing. I mean, we did this big fundraiser thing for Pat, and with the White Album, and then we did Pat's Barbecue, and then due to miscommunication and stuff, Pat and I had a falling out.
Okay.
And I was summarily dismissed from the band. And they kept going, playing like the City Winery in New York and some other things here and there. But Pat and I didn't really talk for a good couple of years. 2013, he was a guest at the Fest for Beatle Fans in Jersey. And I said to Tom Frangione, I said, "Do you think I should go up and talk to him?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Enough time's gone by. It's all good, So I walked up to Pat, and he goes, "Scotty!"
Aww.
Got up, big hug. We talked for a little bit. We caught up. I'd given him a copy of my CD that I had just put out.
Yeah.
And we patched things up, and it all was forgiven. It was all done and said and done, and that was it.
Nice. Nice.
And then and I had been meaning to get to a Smithereens gig after that, and just never had the chance. And then in 2014, the Smithereens played the big, huge Fest for Beatle Fans, which they moved to New York City for that year. And they, instead of doing it in March, they did it in February of 2014. Because it served two purposes. It was the 50th anniversary of the Beatles coming to America.
Right.
That same weekend, as a matter of fact.
Right.
And it was also the 40th anniversary of the first Fest. So for that big thing, they actually went back to the original hotel where they'd had it, and they had the Smithereens come in and play, because they had just put out a CD of them recreating the Washington D.C. Coliseum.
That's right.
Concert.
That's right. I remember that.
And that was the last time I'd gotten to see the Smithereens and see Pat and the guys in person, and it was good to see them. Pat and I stayed barely in touch through Facebook a little bit.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I had recorded some covers of Smithereens tunes for a project I was in, and I would post them on his page. And the last one, I had done a cover of Blue Period. With my then girlfriend singing the Belinda Carlisle part.
Okay.
And we didn't have a keyboard player, so I had a friend of mine from California play bass, and I sent him a live version. I sent him the live version, and he replicated Mike's bass solo. Where the keyboard solo would have been. Okay. But I had posted that. I said, "Hey Pat, I thought you might get a kick out of this. I did this with a couple of friends of mine," and he just posted a smiley face as a comment, and that was it. Nice. And that was the last time he and I really had any kind of communication. Okay. Over the last week or two, I had been meaning to just pick up the phone. I was like, you know what? Let me give him a call just to say hi, wish him a happy Thanksgiving, see how he's doing. Yeah. And for the life of me, I have no idea why I never picked up the phone. Because we don't think that all of us have the same thing, and then we don't act on it because we don't think like I better call him because he could be gone any day now. Right. Right. I had a few moments like that on Monday. It was funny. I was like organizing my CDs, my giant wall of CDs, right? Which I had just alphabetized, and I thought I had everything, but then I have like a bunch in my bedroom too, and I had I'm obsessively putting all my Miles Davis CDs in chronological order, right? And I just was like going over like all of the D's in the rack, making sure they're alphabetically, organized. And let me guess. Alphabetical order by artist, and then chronological order by release. When I can, yes. That's exactly how I am. Sure. When it's an artist that I know that information for. Right.
And then
I just think it's funny that we pretty much we're the same person in a lot of ways.
Totally. And it was weird. I swear to God, this is Monday, and I come across, I'm going through the D's, and I hit the "This Is Pat DiNizio" CD, and I just kind of
Which version do you have?
I'm not sure. Just the standard version. It's nothing, no special bonus things.
Well, I don't know if that actually started out as a project that he had put out by himself through his own website.
Yep.
It was a three discs.
No, I just have the one disc.
I'll have to get you the 3 disc version.
Okay. Well, I just lingered over it for an extra second or two. Like, it's been a minute since I listened to that. Huh. And I just it was like a weird thing that I was just like, oh yeah. And then I, thought about Pat for a second, because the last time I saw him was in July on one of those Mark Hudson gigs at the Iridium.
Right.
And, I'd seen him a bunch of times over the years. I'd met him a handful of times, always sweet, always friendly. I don't need to tell you what kind of a warm guy he was. Every time I met, and I just talked to John about this on his podcast. Every time you talk to that guy, you got the sense that you were already his friend. I remember being really young. I remember he played the Bottom Line. He did a solo acoustic show opening for Nils Lofgren. This might have been 90. Is when Songs and Stories.
That was 97.
97. Okay.
Yeah, that was the same tour that I saw him on.
Okay, and I had met him the first time I met him was on the street in New York in 1990. I was hanging out in the city. He was coming out of the China Club, and I'll give you the backstory. My Smithereens meeting all of them except Pat backstory in a minute. Cool. But
okay.
I'd already seen them at the Beacon Theater Saturday, October 29th, 1988, on the Green Thoughts tour. That was the show that made me want to be a rock star.
Right.
Up until that point, I knew I wanted to be a musician. I'd already seen the Monkees at the Pier, and I wanted to be in the music business. But I had never had a current modern day artist that I identified with personally. That could be me.
Right.
In 1987, 88, there were not a lot of paisans fronting bands. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I love Sting and everything, but Sting doesn't look like me. Sting doesn't talk like me. Right?
The Smithereens were the everyman.
These guys, and Pat in particular, being Italian American and me being Italian American, I looked at him and I thought that could be me. I identified with him personally.
Right.
And on a whole other level. And his swagger and his attitude on stage was very attractive. And I thought, that could be me. He was I've been describing him to people as the older brother I never had. He was yeah, kid, you can do this too. All you got to do is, work your ass off, play the clubs like we did, man. I felt very connected to them as people besides loving the music,
Right.
So it's summer 1990. It's the summer between high school and college. We're hanging out in the city, and he comes out of the China Club with this girl, and I'm like, hey, Pat, man, I'm a fan. And he goes, oh, hey, man, how you doing? He starts chatting up, blah, 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 blah. I said, what were you doing in there? Were you jamming with the band or something? He's like, yeah, I sat in, we did Money, but they didn't know the changes. So I kind of had to show him the changes, and as he says the words, I kind of had to show him the changes. He mimes playing a guitar.
Right.
And he had the stance that I had seen on TV a million times, the stance that I'd seen at the Beacon Theater where his legs were spread apart and he's bouncing them. I had to kind of show him the changes, and it just...
And he became rock star Pat.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right in front of my face on the street there. And he chatted for 5 minutes. He's like, all right, we're gonna go. Good to see you, man. Take care. And he gets in the cab and walks away and drives away. Another time I met him in Boston, outside the Middle East, which was this is on the Date with the Smithereens tour. And same deal, outside the stage door or whatever. He's just hanging out, chatting with me. And the crowd was a little weird that night. they were a little too cool for school, this crowd.
Right. Right.
There were some diehards like me all the way down front, but they were having a hard time like getting the crowd really into them on their side. And you could see it. Like he'd be playing and he would like make a face like a bug-eyed look at the crowd like bleh, like trying to get and rise any kind of reaction out of them. And when I met him afterward and told them that I'm from New York and I'd seen him at the Beacon, and he kind of, I felt like he kind of like embraced me as like, oh, one of my guys like from my town, from New York. And I remember him saying, yeah, I don't know what was up with these people, man. They were little guts, and it was like, I felt like I was on the inside. It was like a Cosa Nostra kind of vibe,
Oh yeah.
And, and afterward he was like, all right, we got to go, man. Great seeing you. And he gave me a hug and I felt like I was like part of the family a little bit. So then like 2 years later when he was playing the Bottom Line, I totally felt comfortable going to the stage door and like knocking on the back, on the dressing room door. Like I already knew him,
Right. Right. Well, some of the I mean, I'm just talking about like almost like the career highlights for me with Pat.
Yeah, sure.
But
I never crossed that line like you did.
But here's the stuff that I remember.
Okay.
That I really remember. That first year we did the Memorial Day thing.
Yeah.
I stayed in Pat's living room. I stayed on his couch.
Oh, wow.
He let me stay in his house. Woke up in the middle of the night. He comes down. He goes, "You asleep?" I said, no. He goes, "Come on in the kitchen."
Yeah.
Grabs a frozen pizza out of the freezer. He goes, "Here's the trick." And he pours olive oil on it. Puts it in the oven. He goes, "Let's go get some cigarettes because we needed to get cigarettes." And I was a smoker at the time. So I was like, so we get in his car, we drive to the local Quick Check. It's 3 a.m.
Oh my God.
We go get cigarettes. He's got a pizza in the oven. He picks up some ice cream. We come back. We're sitting at his kitchen table, eating frozen pizza and ice cream. And he's telling me, he goes, "Oh my God," he goes, "you got to hear this stuff." He pulls out this disc. They had just finished it the week before. It was the remakes of the Smithereens cuts that they had done for the 7th Inning Stretch soundtrack.
Oh, okay.
He pulls out the CD and he's like, "Listen to this." He goes, "It's dead on exact. We recreated the original songs." And he explained why they did it. He goes, "Yeah, Capitol wanted us to pay like so much money to license." I was like, "They're my songs."
Right.
He's like, "Yeah, they're your songs, but we own the recordings."
Right.
So he's like, "Screw it. We'll just, and that's why so many artists do go in and record.
Absolutely.
But he's playing like, I remember the special came out in the soundtrack and hearing the new version of Blood and Roses and the new version of A Girl Like You. And I'm like, wait, Pat played me other stuff. Like they re-recorded Blues Before and After. And Pat was telling me how originally when he played the lead on that song, he bent the string so far it cut into his finger. He's telling me these stories. So here I am, this was 2005, so it made me 22, 23.
Okay.
And I'm sitting in the kitchen with the guy who at the time, the Smithereens were my favorite American rock and roll band of all time.
Yeah.
So here I am sitting in the kitchen with the lead singer songwriter of this band.
Right.
And he's playing these recordings like a high school guy going, dude, check this out. I'm so proud of this,
Wow.
So it's those things. Another thing, if you look at my Facebook page, I had posted posted something in 2006. By this point, I was well with the family, and I was close with Pat and Jimmy and Severo.
Okay.
Dennis and I always got along, but we never became friends for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I respect that out of Dennis. I would love to have become better friends with him, but for whatever reason, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, in August of 2006, I took my nephew, who was 9 years old at the time, just to give you a frame of reference from my own, this little boy, this 9-year-old boy that I took to his first concert is going to be 21 in May.
Wow.
But
okay.
I was like, all right, so the kid doesn't know any of the music. I'm just taking him to the show. It was an outdoor thing in Asbury Park. I said, I want him to be familiar with what he's going to hear. So I had burned him a CD of the hits.
Right.
Songs that I knew they were pretty much going to play at the show.
Right.
Because he was listening to music when he went to bed. So we get to this park, and Jimmy sees us. He goes, Scott. And I turn. He goes, come on in. Brings me in right backstage, first thing.
Yeah.
You know, and we're like, welcome. I said, hey, everybody, this is my nephew. This is Gabe. Hey, Gabe, nice to meet you. Hope you have a good time. And Gabe brought the CD that I had burned for him.
Yeah.
And all the guys in the band signed that CD for him.
Mm.
And they took pictures. They each took pictures with him. After the show was over, Pat says to me, he goes, hey, we're going over to the Wonder Bar. Do you want to come along? I was like, I'd love to come along, but I got a 9-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Pat goes, hey, Lance, is it okay if Scott brings the kid? Talking to Lance, who owned the Wonder Bar.
Right.
And Lance is, yeah, sure, come on over. So,
wow.
So my nephew Gabe and I go to this bar in Asbury Park. We're sitting at this big table having dinner with Pat. It's basically Pat, me, my nephew, Jimmy, and a couple of his kids. Like I said, my 9-year-old nephew getting this experience of being in the band, got to watch the entire concert.
Right.
From the wings of the stage.
Right.
And the kid had listened to the CD enough times that he knew the lyrics and was singing along.
Right.
Which made me proud.
Sure.
But what was really cool was watching Jimmy turn to the side to face the wings and look at Gabe and smile and laugh while he's playing.
Yeah.
So it's those personal moments, like, you know, where like the guys were always good to me.
Yeah.
But to have them meet my nephew.
Yeah.
And treat him like part of the extended family.
Yeah.
Was really mind blowing, and that's the stuff that I miss about Pat.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I'm going to miss the music and going to the shows, it's those personal moments. The sitting in his dining room, sitting in his kitchen table at 3 a.m. eating pizza.
Yeah.
Talking about movies. I remember when the Peter Jackson remake of King Kong came out.
Yeah.
I remember calling Pat on the phone, talking about it because we were both such fans of the original.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, one of the quotes, Pat, as you know, Pat had an affinity for movie quotes.
Yeah.
And one of the quotes, he looked at me and said, as I was getting things set up at one of the barbecues, I said, we good? He looks at me and goes, everybody knows you're square, Erickson, but you've got a reputation for carelessness that can't be glossed over. which was a quote from the original King Kong.
Right. Right.
And a couple of years later, I asked him and Jimmy because I had a local music paper doing an article about me.
Yeah.
Up in this area, and I had asked them. I said if they'd be willing to, offer a few comments, a few lines about me for this article, and for my press kit. And Pat said, he goes, having played with Scott, whether it's a song by our favorite group, the Beatles, or one of my own Smithereens tunes, Scott has an ear for harmony and an amazing. He's got a reputation for excellence that can't be glossed over.
Nice.
That's
fantastic.
Like I said, and despite the falling out, I was still a Smithereens fan, and I was so glad we were able to patch things up.
Nice. And I'm happy for that as well, man. I'm really glad that happened.
Looking through and reading everybody's eulogies and seeing how many people that I met and became friends with through my connections with Pat and the Smithereens is mind-blowing. And
well, what's mind-blowing to me is the consistency of the stories about how personable, they all, not just Pat. I mean, I'll give you my quick, the quick Reader's Digest story for me, Especially For You came out, and I was hooked, and I was thrilled to finally have a modern day band that I could call my own.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I'm sorry we got off the subject.
No, that's okay. No, this is we're on the subject. What are you talking about? So I was 86. I was 14. I was freshman at Music and Art High School, and I was still, going into the city, going into Manhattan for school was a big deal, because if you grew up in Brooklyn or Long Island or whatever, Manhattan was Emerald City. It was Oz.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was still, my stars were still in my eyes, right? So I would go to Tower Records after school, like, woo, look at this. And I had the Especially For You album. I had the Behind the Wall of Sleep, Blood and Roses double A-sided single. Mm-hmm. And I was a Hopeless Smithereens fan. I said, finally, I have my band, right? I'm in Tower Records, and I see Jimmy walking around in Tower Records.
Wow.
And, it's like I said to John on the Hustle podcast a couple of minutes ago. Encountering rock stars was not part of my routine in those days. That just didn't happen. Growing up in Flatbush, you didn't just run into guys who were on the radio in the street. Right. You know what I mean? So I go up and I start talking to him, and he's like super sweet and friendly. Like, hey, man, yes, you play music? Yeah, that's great. And he was like really super cool. I had my little folder from school. I take it out, and I had him sign it. It was the only thing I had on me to sign. And he goes, I'm going to be meeting the other guys here in just a few minutes. And I was like, oh my God, really? So then Dennis comes up, also super cool. Hey, John, good to meet you. Hey, and he signs my folder. Nice. Mike shows up. He signs the folder. Pat never shows up. And Dennis is like, yeah, I don't know where Pat is. I don't know what happened to him. And I said, and I don't know, like your ballsy story about wanting to play guitar with him backstage. I'm like, well, if I write my address on the folder, will you like have Pat sign it and mail it to me? And they're like, and Dennis is like, yeah, sure. So I write my address on the folder. I give it to him. I float home. And my sister, I tell my sister the story. She's like, you're never going to see that thing again. But a week later, in the mail, a big big manila envelope with the return address, The Smithereens, P.O. Box, blah, blah, blah. And Pat signed the folder. Hey, John, sorry you had to wait so long. Best Pat DiNizio. A handwritten note from Dennis on stationery from the Tides Motor Inn going, hey, John, how's that for service? Thanks for hanging around at Tower. And then they also threw in like a signed 8x10. Like they put together this like Smithereens care package that I still have to this day.
Fantastic.
And Scott, you have to understand, in 1987, this is prior to social media where you can like go on Twitter and tell Drake that you think he sucks, right? This is like guys didn't just step off of the LP covers and come to life in those days. Yeah. So to me, I might as well have been meeting the Kinks or the Who. I didn't make the distinction. This was like a huge deal. So that was that. And then I got the Green Thoughts album, loved it, saw them at the Beacon on that tour. Then 11, same thing. And then Pat steps out of the China Club, and I finally meet him face to face for like 5 minutes. And then I would just follow them, and whenever I saw them live, I saw a bunch of shows like in Boston, and I would just always hang around and hope to meet them. And every time I met Pat, he was always sweet. I saw him at the Iridium couple of years ago when Les Paul was still doing the Iridium thing. I think Les had just passed away, but they were still keeping like the Monday night thing going. And he was a guest, and he came out. He had already been ill for a little bit, but he could still like use his arms and play guitar. Like I remember him coming out and addressing. There was like a group of Japanese tourists at the table, like really close to the stage. And he was like, where are you guys all from? He's like, oh, we're from Japan. And he's like, oh, you're from Japan? Okay, great. And he takes a drink. He goes, kampai. And, does a shot like on the stage. And I met him after that, and he on the street, and he was super, super sweet. He's like, yeah, come on by early next time, man. We'll hang out. Good talking to you. By that time, I think I'd already done the Parsons gig for a while. I might have been with Flo and Eddie, Happy Together at that point. So I was legit, you know what I mean? And then the last time I saw him was no. The last time I saw the band was the 30th anniversary of the Especially for You album at BB King's, and he was not playing guitar at this point. He was fronting the band without playing guitar. I think he just had the surgery on his arm. And
right. Was that what they brought in Andy on keys at that point?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, January of '86, and they were running like a video montage of stuff from those days, and playing the Especially for You album in full. So right. I had my Especially for You LP cover with me, and I was waving it up in the air at one point during the show. And he sees it. He says, "Somebody's got the album cover," and everyone turns around. Woo! He goes, "You want us to sign it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "It'll cost you $100. And everyone laughs. And then he goes, "I'm serious." And then I finagled my way backstage. I've played BB King's enough times that I kind of know like where all the nooks and crannies are, and I can get back there. And I see him. I'm like, "Hey man, great to meet you again. Great show." And he sees the LP cover. He goes, "I can't use my right arm, man. I was serious about signing it for $100." And I'm like, "Oh, dude, I'm so sorry." He says, "No, you know what? Fuck it, let's go." And somebody gives him a Sharpie, and he signs it. He's like with his bad hand. He says, "No." I'm like, dude, don't. It's fine." He goes, No, man, it's all right. Come here, And he writes like Pat, and it's like really sloppy, but he signed it anyway,
And he was probably proud of his accomplishment being able to do it too. Which
possibly,
was cool.
I was really conflicted about it, but I didn't know, I was still like a blubbering fanboy,
Oh yeah.
Meeting him was not. It shouldn't have been a big deal at that point, but like every time I saw him, I was just still kind of a little starstruck. I need to cut this short, but
I'm really glad to have a chance to talk about and talk about my experiences and friendship with him.
You got it. Well, I'm glad. I didn't know that about you, so I'm glad we got to find this out. Quick, favorite album, favorite song.
Depends on the day. If I had to gun to my head, The World We Know off Green Thoughts.
All right, song. My man.
and I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Loved Del Shannon. Del Shannon and my dad were friends.
Oh, okay. So
I'm a big Del Shannon fan, and have him hearing singing backups on that.
Okay.
Was killer, and it was cool asking Pat about that. But my favorite Smithereens album, I think track for track is probably 11.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I could have gone really obscure on you and said the vinyl 45 mix of A Date With. You know about that, right?
No.
There was a 45 RPM box set of A Date With the Smithereens.
Really? Like the full album at 45.
The full album on a set of 45s, yeah.
Huh.
And it's a completely different mix.
Wow.
I've got the girls. I have the Girls About Town EP.
Okay.
Signed by Pat, Dennis, and Jimmy.
Nice.
I've got the original Beauty and Sadness EP on Little Ricky Records.
Yep, me too.
I managed to get all of that stuff.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, for me, I mean, track for track, Green Thoughts was the album that.
Oh, I love that album.
Because I loved Especially for You, but then when I met them and they sent me the thing in the mail,
right,
I felt like they were my friends. I'd never been friends with a rock band before. This was new territory for me at 15. So when Green Thoughts came out, I mean, I have a really special connect. I haven't been able to listen to it yet since he died, by the way. I listened to all of 11 yesterday, most of Date With. I haven't gotten through Green Thoughts yet because that was the album that just like galvanized me as a fan of theirs.
11 was the first album of theirs that I heard all the way through, and I think that's probably why it's my favorite.
Okay.
The album that has the most meaning for me, I think, might be Blow Up, because that was the cassette that Pat signed for me.
Huh.
And my favorite song on that album is the tune that Pat wrote with Diane Warren.
Yeah.
Get a Hold of My Heart.
Oh yeah, great one.
I went to listen to that yesterday.
Yeah.
I had to turn it off after about 25 seconds.
Oh,
I
man.
couldn't take it. I couldn't take it.
All right. Well, we're all going to have our breakdowns, I think, at some point. And I think it says a lot about those guys and about Pat that, like, this music is so personal to us because they made themselves so accessible. I keep saying to people, there was no barrier between rock star and fan. Like, they were us.
Right.
They were us. We were them, you know?
They treated the fans like friends because they never stopped being fans of the bands they idolized.
There you go.
Like, you know, I mean, they you know, Jimmy was a huge Kinks fan, and here he was. Jimmy and Dennis were huge Kinks fans. They get to back up Ray and Dave Davies.
Right.
You know?
That's right.
We never stopped being fans of who we love. And when you find out that the people that we love are fanboys of other people, and so they appreciate.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we finally had a chance to connect, you know, semi in person, because we've been following each other on Facebook a long time. We know a lot of the same people.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, I'm sorry it took the passing of one of our mutual heroes to do it. But, you know,
absolutely.
Let's have another chat in person maybe sometime. We'll do another podcast that's just about you and your path.
I'll be at the Fest for Beatles fans in Jersey City in March.
Cool, man. Well, Scott, thanks for sharing your memories of Pat, and you know, let's keep blasting that music, even if it's painful initially. We got to keep the music going, and you know,
absolutely, John.
It's bigger.
Absolutely.
It's bigger than both of us.
Okay, yeah,
all of us.
It certainly is, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's been real cathartic.
Yeah,
there were a lot of people who were closer to Pat that had, you know, longer and more intimate working relationships than I did, but I don't take for granted what I had, and it did mean a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, when you can create something that touches lives like music does, then you've succeeded in life, and you know, judging by the amount of people to whom this music means so much, myself included. I mean, it was a real. There's no words really to describe, you know, what kind of inspiration I gleaned from those guys. So, you know, rest in power, Paisan.
Yeah.
All right, Scott. I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Have a great gig tonight, man. I'll talk to you later. I'm going to see Star Wars in a couple hours. So.
Enjoy. All right, take care,
man.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, thank you for listening to this special edition of Radio 418. Don't ever stop loving what you love. We love you, Pat. Rest in peace, Paisan. I'll see you on the next one. Be well.